Now today's object is this. It's it's an executive toy. Now my grandfather used to be a paediatrician and he used to keep executive toys like this in his waiting room for the children to play with, and I just used to love playing with them as a child. And it's also known as a Newton's cradle. Now it's called that because in the 17th century Isaac Newton came up with these laws of motion to explain how objects behave, and this beautifully demonstrates those laws, particularly the law of conservation of momentum. In fact, the momentum is always conserved. But it could equally be called the Huygens cradle, because Huygens came up with the idea that momentum is conserved and also kinetic energy is conserved, but presumably he didn't have the PR to get his name on it. But with all of these ideas, it's really important to remember that they're rarely attributable to just one single invention. They don't arise from nothing. Newton was famously standing on the shoulders of giants, and those giants go back to the ancient Greek times, to the Babylonians, if not before. So let's have a look at it. Well, this is actually a pendulum, which is important because it means that these balls can only move in one direction, this way or this way. And the material the balls are made of is also really important. Now, they're all made of the same weight of steel. And steel is a very elastic material, which means that when it collides, when this ball collides with the other ball, there's going to be a very slight deformation of the material, and then it reforms. And when it bounces back, because it's very elastic, it doesn't lose very much kinetic energy with the collision. So let's watch the momentum in being conserved. So momentum is the product of mass and velocity is basically speed in a certain direction. So I'm giving the ball momentum here, and it travels with that same velocity until it hits the ball number 2, and then the momentum is transferred to ball number 3, which is transferred to ball number 4, which is transferred to ball number 5, which has got nowhere to transfer it to, so it travels up with the same speed as ball 1 and then returns. So the other thing that this shows is conservation of energy. Now, the French physicist Émile Chatelet came up with this law, and what it means is that the total energy of the system can never be lost or gained. It can only be transformed, changed into different forms of energy. And this system is set up to minimise any changes. So at the moment, none of these balls have got any kinetic energy. So that's the energy of motion, the energy of movement. They're completely still, so they don't have any kinetic energy. But if I pull the weight of this ball up with my big strong arm muscles and then I let it go, it has kinetic energy. But as soon as it hits ball 2, this kinetic energy is transferred to ball 3, to ball 4, and then to ball 5. And you can watch ball 5 rises up to the same height that ball 1 had before returning, and eventually it will slow and stop. And that's because it's losing kinetic energy with every collision, those deformations that I was talking about earlier, every time the balls hit each other. And also they have to push through the air, and these thin nylon wires are kind of rubbing a little bit against the cradle. And all of these things steal a bit of the kinetic energy from the balls and release it as heat energy instead. So what happens if I pull back 2 of these balls? Well, in this case, ball 2 is hitting ball 3, transferring the energy and momentum to ball 4, which transfers it to ball 5, and ball 5 rises up. At the same time, ball 1 is transferring its energy and momentum to ball 2, to ball 3, to ball 4. There's no ball 5 now, so it's going up as well. So they hop off together. Okay, it's pretty cool to watch. And then I'm going to carefully try this. Pulling 3 back. There we go. Isn't that just so beautiful? If I pull back 3 balls, basically exactly the same thing happens. The balls are all transferring their energy and momentum. And this will go on forever and ever if there was no friction, and if each of these balls was perfectly elastic. They would just keep moving endlessly. And I love it. I could watch that endlessly.